Are you sitting on your daily commute thinking longingly about your next holiday? Are you filled with so much wanderlust that you've got no idea where to go next? Or have you got your next trip booked and in the bag and you're looking for tips and tricks to make it all go smoothly? Then, welcome to the TRAVELUST Podcast. Join me, Sam Sparrow, every fortnight as I chat to the people who've built their life around a desire to experience the world. As a travel blogger and wannabe professional city breaker, I'm nosy, and we get deep into travel memories, favourite destinations, and tips to make your next trip go with a bang. I'm thrilled to have Lucy Sheref from Wanderluce.com as my very first guest on the TRAVELUST, as I've been reading her incredible travel tips and packing guides for years. We chat about how being a baby expat changed her perspective on travel and how going long haul is in her blood. Lucy tells us about how a perfect storm of life experiences led her to get packing and on the road, and how everyone should visit the Middle East at least once, as well as her experiences of living in Thailand. And we reflect on what travel might be like now she's the mum of gorgeous little Anais, and Anais even makes a guest appearance on the show too. It's such a treat of an episode, and I can't wait to dive in. Remember to tweet me at Sam R. Sparrow with the hashtag TheTravelUst with your favourite travel tips and memories and your perspective on what we discuss. You can find even more travel content on my website at thesparrowflies.com, along with all of the podcast episodes. Are you packed? Then let's go. Welcome, Lucy, to this episode of the TRAVELUST Podcast. Very excited to have you on my podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
You're a friend and a travel inspiration and an all-round good egg, and I think we're going to have some very interesting conversations.
That was such a nice introduction.
Was it?
Yeah,
I didn't mean a word of it.
Nando's on you next time.
Nando's on me next time. Okay, so for those of you that don't know how much of a good egg Lucy is, Lucy, would you like to introduce kind of yourself and who you are and where you're at and all of those things?
Hello, my name's Lucy and I run the blog Wanderluce. I'm a freelance journalist and I live in London. I've done lots and lots of travelling in my time, and I guess that's kind of my speciality or specialty. I never know which one to say. And I'm currently on maternity leave because I just had a baby.
Yay! And Anais may well be making absolutely welcome sort of I reckon a highlight spot in today's podcast.
She tries to. She does try to get in on every podcast that she's ever on.
She's such an air hogger.
I know, right?
I know, but that's going to be an important part of, I guess, your travel journey.
Yeah.
Now, Anais is on board and ready for the travel and has a passport.
Yeah, she's got a passport. It's so exciting. She's got such a good passport picture as well.
Oh, please. She's so photogenic.
I know.
It's ridiculous. My passport photo looks like I've been arrested. It's the worst.
Mine does too. It's terrible. She certainly didn't get her photogenicness from me.
Okay. Well, given that we'll probably start talking about Anais's earliest travel memories, I would like you to kind of start with kind of telling me all about your earliest travel memory.
I think I was a pretty well-travelled little bean. I had a passport before I was I was about the same age as her when I had a passport, and I guess my earliest travel memories would probably be moving to Saudi Arabia when I was 2. Oh, I was a little bit under 2 actually. I was about 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really difficult, isn't it, with memories, because I think I feel like I do remember it, because I was there for maybe 3 years, but do I remember it, or do I remember the pictures and the stories that my parents told me, and have I created a memory? I don't know, but I'll claim them as memories. So yeah, I guess my earliest travel memories were of living in Saudi Arabia, and we lived in a kind of expat community, and we had our own rooftop swimming pool, and that's what I really, really remember. I remember learning to swim there, and hanging out with my dad a lot there as well. When he finished work, he would come and jump in the pool with me and help me to swim. So that's probably my earliest travel memory.
That's a pretty cool travel memory, I'll be honest. Because my earliest travel memory is like Punch and Judy on Swanage Beach. So I'm just saying that's a very good travel memory indeed. Oh.
It's a little bit more exotic.
Yeah, sure, definitely. And so how do you think kind of that early, so moving to Saudi Arabia, rooftop pool balling, all of that kind of stuff, how did that early kind of like becoming an expat before you even knew what expat was a thing, how has that kind of shaped sort of your life of travel? So I know that you've got like some big travel stories, and travel has really impacted kind of how you've lived your life, and with Ollie and now Anais. But how do you think those early travel memories kind of moved you into that sphere?
I think because I've always been I've like long haul flying back and forth to see my gran and stuff like that, and because my dad was Egyptian as well, so my first family holidays they weren't really we didn't stay in the UK. We would not go on holiday very often, but we would go to Egypt. So my first trip to the pyramids was when I was 2, and so I think because of that, going long haul into a bit more far flung, I think that's just maybe in my blood a little bit. I'm just more used to that. But weirdly, as I find camping now, I find that so exciting, because that's not something that I did as a child. It's like way more exotic for me.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's strange. And like centre parks and stuff, we never did stuff like that ever. So for me, that would be, I don't know if it would be something I want to do, but it's just a bit more exotic to me.
I guess it holds a bit more mystique, because I mean, my summers were spent every year in a VW camper van with an awning in Swanage with my grandparents.
So cool.
That's all I did. And then when I was 11, I went to Australia.
Wow.
And that was batshit. Like, I was like, oh my God, the plane and the flying and Singapore and Australia. And it was kind of a bit of a kind of overwhelming experience. And so I didn't really travel that much until I got much older. So talk to me about kind of your later travel. How did you really get into the travel mindset? And you're a sort of, I guess, you're a travel and lifestyle blogger as well as a journalist, but for a while you focused mainly on travel. How did that all come about? How was travel the thing?
I think if you talk to my school friends, they would not say I was adventurous. So but I think, like I say, it was sort of always in my blood. But I didn't do the gap year thing and backpacking. I worked and then went to university. So I didn't actually do like a solo travel until I was 25. Yeah, 25. I was in a job that I hated. I really, really hated it. And it was my dad that sort of encouraged me to just quit. He was like, quit, it's fine. I'll support you. Because I'm from quite a privileged background, so it was quite easy for me to just be like, fine, quit. I mean, I paid my own way and everything. It's just, if I was in dire straits, I have my family to fall back on.
But I think that's so interesting how you would say that, because I think even with that family to fall back on, I still think that's like a really big leap to go sod it at 25. I think about like what I was like at 25. That's still a huge decision to kind of go, right, sod it, you know what, I'm just going to travel, for someone that wasn't necessarily considering themselves as quite adventurous.
Yeah, I guess so. I think a few things sort of collided. It was one of those perfect storms. I hated my job. I'd had a year of being single after breaking up with my sort of first love, who I think I was with for like 6 years or something. Yeah, from like 17 to 24 basically. And I'd had this year of saying yes and having the most amazing, like I would just partied all the time. And I think I kind of got to the end of that and been like, I'm over this. I'm over London. I want to do something more. Like there must be something more to life than just going to a shit job that you hate and going out drinking at night. And I think I literally just thought, okay, I want to go to Thailand. And I cannot tell you how green I was. It was so ridiculous. I went to Thailand I basically booked my tickets, booked a little tour, and then ended up on a plane to Thailand with no Lonely Planet, no guidebook, nothing. Didn't know what I was doing. And I just winged it. It was crazy.
And was it, I mean, you're still here and you're still alive and you're still travelling, so presumably that kind of worked out okay.
It did. It totally did. So I was supposed to, although, funnily enough, I mean, it's the complete opposite to what happened to me later in life, but I was supposed to go away for a year. So I'd booked my tickets to Thailand. I'd booked a little tour in Thailand. I can't remember who with, and just for the first couple of weeks. And that was about it. And then I had planned to go to Australia, and I'd got my working holiday visa. I was supposed to go to Australia kind of a month or so into being in Thailand, but I actually stayed in Thailand for about 4 or 5 months, then went to Australia. But while I was away, so I did get to Australia and I was working, and I based myself in Melbourne. I did a little bit of travelling, but I mean, Australia is so expensive. It was so much more expensive than Thailand was that I was in for a bit of a shock. So I wasn't really doing that much exciting stuff. I was just working in a pizza restaurant, and I'm living in a hostel. It wasn't super exciting, but I did love Australia. But then my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer while I was in Australia, so I had to come home.
Right.
So I think I was all in all, I think I was only away for maybe 8 months. And in my head, I was kind of like, well, I'll probably go to Australia. I'll be there for minimum a year. I'll get sponsored for my second year visa, blah, 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 blah. But obviously everything changed. I had to come back, had to go back to London, had to go back to work. And then I just got sucked back into London life. And, you know, once you go back into kind of back to work and you're back to renting a flat, that's it. You're a slave to the wage.
Yeah, and it becomes a real routine, and that kind of dream that you were living before, it becomes such a distant memory. It kind of doesn't feel real.
Yeah, totally.
So then you had a second experience in Thailand, and going off for what was supposed to be a short amount of time. I was just about to say the number of days, and now I literally can't remember. So how much of a bad friend am I? That's it, 195. This will go for 195 days with, you know, if you fast forward a few years with your now husband. Do you feel like, was that a decision that you kind of made jointly again because you're in that stage in your life? Did you feel like you had unfinished business with the travelling thing? Yeah. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I definitely had unfinished business, which is actually quite hard to say. So I'd actually been by the time we went back to Thailand, me and Ollie together, when we both decided to quit our jobs. He got made redundant, or he chose voluntary redundancy from his job at Disney, and we were like, you know what? Let's just use this. We've got a little bit of savings. We've been living together not very long at this point, a few months. My dad had died in this time, so with inheritance, I'd bought a house, I'd bought a flat. So I was in a very privileged position that we really could both just quit our jobs, rent the flat out, and we were kind of a bit golden. But yes, as you alluded to, we were only supposed to go away for 195 days, 6 months roughly. And we planned this super aggressive itinerary. Thailand was on it, but not until much later. So I mean, that was kind of bonkers because actually it wasn't 195 days. We actually came back about 3 years later.
I mean, that's different. And what was it about that experience that was it a routine? Did you just fall in love with the way of life? Like, what was it, the freedom? What made you stay out there for so long?
It was so many things, but I think, basically it was the freedom. While I was out there, I felt like I'd always been in a job that I hated with no prospects. And when I was on the road, we started a blog and that took off and meant that I started freelancing and doing various bits and bobs. And I was like, this could be my life. And I just loved going to different places at the drop of a hat. I really, really loved that it was just the two of us and I wasn't in my normal routine. And I loved the fact that I wasn't in London anymore. I don't know, it was all of those things really, but I think probably because I was able to work while we were on the road, I don't think I could have travelled indefinitely without a job or without a purpose.
That's really interesting, and actually that kind of echoes some of my friends that have done long-term travel have said just long-term traveling isn't the thing for them. It's about building a life around it, and it's interesting that, you know, in a lot of ways travel and that trip has sort of shaped everything now, because you're now a freelance journalist that has come about from the blogging and the writing, the contacts, and I've made it sound easy. I'm sure it's very hard. And I will plug, there's a few blog posts that Lucy has written about making that jump, and Lucy has her own extremely successful podcast where she talks about that quite a lot. So I will link all of that in the show notes. But travel really has become such a huge kind of instigator for really amazing things in your life.
Yeah, massively. It started off with the travel, but it ended with a whole different life, which, it's crazy.
And why did you come home? Did you just sort of go with it's 3 years now, guys, like time to come back?
Well, I don't know if we would have come back if it wasn't for the fact that, actually, no, we would have come back. Yeah, we would have done.
Oh my God, if you hadn't have ever come back, we would never have met.
I know. Well, that's why we came back.
Game changer. Because you just knew there was a Sam Sparrow waiting for you in London.
Exactly. I've got that song now. I knew you were waiting for me, going around in my head, like an earworm.
Yeah, that's the best. You're welcome, by the way.
Yeah, I can't remember the question. Sorry, I veered off.
No, we were talking about pop songs. It's totally fine. What was it that made you decide to come back?
We were getting married.
Sure, that seems like a reasonable answer.
So we decided. So we knew we were coming back for the wedding, but it's all a bit complicated, really, because we got engaged while we were away, and while we were away for kind of almost. Oh, hello.
Hi. She's like, yes, you got engaged, mummy. Hello.
Well, we got engaged while we were travelling, and we knew that we were going to come back for the wedding. But in my head, I thought we'll probably just go back out to Thailand afterwards because, you know, I love my new life living on a tropical island. But after a few months of living in Koh Tao, I knew that I wanted to go home. I think we both knew we were sick of it felt like living in kind of poverty. We were earning Thai wages, and it's cheap to live there. It's definitely cheap, but it's not so cheap that you can ever save money. And so many people that lived on the same island as us were stuck in this cycle where they basically had bought a one-way ticket and they couldn't afford to go home. They just couldn't afford to.
That's really, really interesting. It's something I think that people don't think about.
Not at all. No, not at all. I think people just think, and I thought that too when we had got engaged on the island that we ended up living in, and we love this island, Koh Tao in Thailand. It's so beautiful. We loved it there, but when we lived there, we suddenly felt like we discovered this whole new community, which was basically like the Costa del Sol. It was just Brits abroad. And I don't know, and there was a bit of a darker side to it, although not the way that people talk about it in the media. You didn't feel like you were going to die at any minute. That's still quite sensationalized, but I don't know. I think people just forget about that side of it. And there were so many people, I don't know if you've heard the phrase banana pancake trail, that Only Planet say it a lot.
Yeah.
Disparagingly about people who dare to go travelling to popular places. But it's one of those islands that's on the banana pancake trail. And we would see a cycle throughout the month because it's right next door to Koh Samui and Koh Phangan. So you would see this cycle of full moon party. That week that the full moon party's on, Koh Tao would be dead, and it's blissful, no tourists. And then the week after, all of the people who are on the full moon party in Koh Phangan all roll into Koh Tao, and then it's hell for like a week, 2 weeks. They're all getting their open water diving qualification, and they're all being annoying on the island, getting in scooter accidents and then 2 weeks later they leave, and the cycle would start again. It's just, it just wasn't the one.
Well, I think you make a really important distinction as well between the difference between travelling and living as an expat.
Yeah.
And I think, you've really carefully and sort of really well explained like that really core difference about a kind of, I guess, wanting an authentic experience. But the reality is, if you're living there all the time, it becomes, very much like anywhere else that you might live in the world, in London or, anywhere really, that it becomes your daily way of life. It doesn't become that travel experience.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not paradise anymore. And you will, those people that will, that when they're travelling on a Monday morning or whatever, sometimes people do it when they're on holiday, but everybody did it on the island. They'd take a picture of the sunset or whatever, be like, how's your Monday? And you think, well, you're literally only saying this because there is so much shit about living on this island that this is like the one thing that you can be like, hey, we get amazing sunsets and we can have beer on the beach, which is awesome, but not every night.
Yeah, that gets a bit old after a while.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but it does.
No, I think that's fine. And I think that's why, in many ways, I've never lived the expat life. And I don't know, maybe, I'll be a silver-haired retiree to somewhere awesome. But it's definitely not... It's something I think that I probably wouldn't enjoy as much, because as much as I bitch and whinge about being in London, like, home is home, and I'm super curious and want to go to lots of places. But, I like my home and my cats and, all of those things. And I think for some people, there comes a point where that endless cycle of either travelling everywhere and just being on the road or living in one place, which, if you could live anywhere, you start to see the kind of cracks show.
Yeah, definitely.
So you came back and you got married. Hooray! And so you've talked about kind of, I don't know how you didn't do gap year, and neither did I. And I've heard you describe before that obviously when you went away, you described yourself as a flash packer.
Yeah,
which was a term that was kind of, until about 3 or 4 months ago, was totally new on me. So
really?
That was, I hadn't really, because the backpacking vibe has kind of never been my thing. I was supposed to go on this World Challenge expedition when I was 17, 18 at school. To Borneo. I think had I have gone on that trip, my life might have taken a little bit more of a turn. But it's one of those trips where you had to fundraise for it. Yeah. And if you didn't fundraise, your parents basically had to underwrite the cost.
Oh my God.
Now, there's no doubt that I would have raised the money. Like, I've worked in the charity sector all my life. Fundraising was in my blood. But my parents weren't prepared, fair play, to underwrite the massive costs. So I never went on the Borneo expedition. And I do sometimes wonder whether my feelings about going backpacking would have been different had I have had a sort of kind of tame version of that experience on this World Challenge expedition. But yeah, so you did your flash packing thing, but you've also done other different types of traveling, city breaks, and you went on safari.
Yeah.
Just before, while you were pregnant, which, by the way, amazing. I can't imagine doing anything apart from lying on my back in a dark room for 9 months. But fair play, like absolutely incredible. But what's your favourite, like if you think about your life now, like how do you like to travel? Are you still long haul? Do you prefer city breaks, luxury, budget? Like what would you say your style is now?
I think before I had Anais, I would have still said, oh, definitely long haul. But now I can totally see the beauty of the city break. And I did always like city breaks before, but I think both Ollie and I am really into going to different, like, interesting places to us. So, and I don't mean that in a snobby way. I don't mean that we wouldn't go to Berlin, because we do want to go to Berlin. It's on our list. But we really love the Middle East, and we really like going to places that challenge us a little bit, but we love comfort.
Yeah, sure.
Especially now. And, we have, even when I was flash packing, I still was, my flash packing would definitely be considered somebody else's total budget. I think the cheapest place I ever stayed was in Chiang Mai, and it was like £1 a night. So I did quite a lot of budget travel, but yeah, comfort is key now. I'm all about it.
I agree. It's why I've not actually. So I have now stayed in a hostel, but I stayed in a shared room with Beverly and Sophie in a very nice hostel in Amsterdam that had like murals on the walls and a basement club that was not full of scrubby 17-year-olds. And I've never stayed in a shared hostel dorm. And at the ripe old age of 34, I don't expect that I will. So that level of comfort is something that I can get down with.
You're not missing out.
Yeah, I just feel like maybe that's just one experience that has passed me by, and I'm do you know what? I'm totally okay with it. So you've talked about kind of going to, I guess, destinations, maybe not off the beaten track is probably not the right word, but destinations that you feel are a bit more challenging to you. What's been your favourite destination of all the places that you've travelled to, if you had to pick? And basically it's my podcast, so you have to pick.
This is so hard. I actually can't pick one, so I'm going to give you one, but it's not my favourite. It's just one of my favourites.
Okay, that's fine. I'll let you off.
Jordan.
I wondered if you were going to say that, actually.
Yeah, I love Jordan. It's the most amazing country. I absolutely love it. I'd go back in a second. I really want to go back, actually.
And what was it about Jordan that sort of really captured your imagination?
The people are incredible. If anybody out there who hasn't been to an Arabic country and is worried about going to an Arabic country because they feel like it's not safe or whatever, like, yeah, sure, don't go to Syria right now. Maybe not immediately. Yeah, maybe just give it a few years. Definitely don't be worried, because Arabic hospitality, there is nothing like Arabic hospitality. And do you know what? I totally get it when people have been hassled in Egypt or Morocco. Probably Marrakesh more than anywhere else in Morocco, but Jordan is completely different, and the majority of Middle Eastern countries are different. And I don't know, maybe I'm naive to say that because I'm half Arabic, and so when I travel I'm not particularly exotic to anybody in the Middle East, but just Arabic hospitality, they want you to have a good time. They want you to be well fed to the point that you will be shouting at them to stop feeding you. And Jordan is incredible. The question that we got asked more than anything, because we went there for our honeymoon, and people said, oh, is it safe? Is it safe? And at the time that we went on our honeymoon, I don't think it's ever had a terrorist attack. But, you know, you look at Paris, no one would ever ask you if you were going to Paris next, or are you going to Paris in September? Have I made that up?
Me? I'm never going to Paris again if I have mine.
Oh my God, of course. What is wrong with me?
I'm never going to Paris again, unless it's to Disneyland Paris to meet Tigger.
Yeah, fair. That seems fair. Yeah, that's completely fair. Why would I think you, of all people, will go to Paris in September? Anyway.
I'm going to start getting a reputation. I'm going to get lots of Parisians just hate bombing me because I'm so anti-Paris, but it's fair play.
Anyway, I think they'd respect you for it.
Yeah.
But no one would ever ask you if you said you were going to Paris, oh my God, is it safe? And if you look at the past year in Paris, or even living in London, nobody says to me, I don't know if they say it to you, oh my God, are you okay in London? Is it safe for you to leave the house?
Actually, I've got a funny story for you, because I had the irony of this, I had a little bit of basically I was in a mood and I was like, I'm going to feed the troll because why not? I'm in that kind of mood. And I tweeted a post about London. It was my recent London staycation post. I got an American person. I did not know. I didn't know if I don't know her. So she clearly has been following me and basically gave me a lecture about how London is like the least safe place in the world to visit.
Oh my God. And
I was like, yeah, okay. And in the end, like we had a conversation. It was all very respectful, but I was like, I can't comprehend how you've got to that question. But you're right. I think a lot of people are reticent to visit Arabic countries because of that. I've been to Egypt once and it was a bit of a disaster, not for any particular reason about going to Egypt, but we just tagged along with my parents. My stepdad's a kite surfer and there's this dive of a hotel in Hurghada that has a kite surf school.
Oh, interesting.
And my mum was going with my stepdad for like the second time. My mum just basically said to me, and Andrew and I had not been together that long, and said, please will you come? And we basically got like half board plus flights for £500 for me and Andrew, which should have rung all kinds of alarm bells.
Yeah, exactly.
But we went for a week and and all we did was basically sit on the beach or watch my stepdad go. And then we did venture in to go to the Hard Rock Cafe in Hurghada and had a very interesting taxi ride where basically I thought I was going to die.
They do drive they drive.
They just veer off the road. They don't put their headlights on. Yeah, or their headlights, and so you're in the pitch black, and then all of a sudden they just veer off the road across a field, some sand, and you're like, oh God, we're going to get kidnapped now. It's just a shortcut. It's all good, it's fine. And we did go into Hurghada town, and it was kind of pumping, but it's quite interesting because I am very blonde, ginger jeans, and I got hassled quite a lot, but I used the phrase hassled. It wasn't hassle. It wasn't like rude or catcall. I get a lot worse shouted at me in London. It was just this, it was like, my God, like you are translucent and I'm just going to touch your hair.
Yeah.
And like that can come across if you're nervous as a super aggressive. It happened to my mum in Marrakesh as well. But you kind of, if you just take a step back and you kind of go, yeah, all right. Like in London, you wouldn't go up to someone that looked a bit different and touch their hair because we're British and we don't look at anyone in the eye.
Wouldn't you? I do.
Do you? I need to go on the tube with you more often. But I just think that there's kind of those little things, and it certainly. I mean, I doubt I'll go back to Hurghada. I am super keen to go to Egypt, although the climate just, again, translucent. It's the type of heat that just does not get on well with me. Yeah, I can do Caribbean heat, but I think kind of the Arabic country heat is a bit stressful for me.
Full on, yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
I can understand
Andrew really loves that, so it's fine. So I think kind of your tips about it feeling really safe is really, I think that's really well founded.
Oh, thanks.
So yeah, you can well done, round of applause, thanks. Do you have, I'm not going to ask you for your worst destination, although if you have one, please do share, because, you know, I have one and I have shared constantly about it. But do you have kind of, I guess, a travel moment or memory, or where things have not gone quite right, or it's marred kind of a trip or the destination?
Oh yeah, loads, absolutely loads. I wrote a post about it. My most underwhelming travel experiences, because I think,
link in the show notes below.
Yeah, plug. I have a theory about when you go to a place, how your feelings about it are dictated by so many other things. So like, if, especially for me, when we were kind of long-term traveling, if you go to a place before you're ready to leave the last place, you almost always hate the place that you end up in, if that makes sense. I've said that.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's super interesting.
And if you arrive in a place and you're just in a bad place for whatever reason, you're probably not going to like it. And it works the same way if you really fall in love with a place. There are places that we went to, probably especially in India, because we travelled a lot of India quite fast. I mean, we were there for about 3 months, I think, but India's so big and we kind of, I mean, obviously it's really big. I think anyone listening to this is going to be like, yeah, wow, brand new information. It's really big.
India's huge, guys. Look at a
map. But for whatever reason, I was like, la 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 la, we'll go here, and then 2 days later we'll go here, and blah, blah, blah. No, it's humongous. And there were places that we went to that were both, in fact, India as a whole is the sort of place that I think you have the highest highs and the lowest lows there. But I don't know anyone that if you say, oh, you've been to India, what do you think of it? Won't say, oh my God, I loved it. It's one of my favourite countries. Because it's one of those places that like properly gets under your skin. So yeah, when you're in it, you're not necessarily enjoying every second, which is so weird to say. You're not like, oh, this is really fun. Like, I feel really relaxed after. No, you don't really feel relaxed afterwards. But yeah, but when you look back on it, you're like, oh my God, it's an experience, I guess, which is so, that's so wanky to say. I can't believe I've just said that. It's an experience, guys.
Hashtag wankers. Yeah, that's fine. But you know what? That is so true. And you sort of made me reflect a bit. So when I wrote about kind of when I wrote a post about a destination breaking your heart. And first of all, that was Paris. So I didn't really break my heart. My mum hates Paris. My mum and I have got similar travel tastes. And she was like, I don't even know why you went, because of course you were going to hate it. Fair play. That's, fine. But I think what's interesting is I've done a lot of city breaks in very quick succession this year, fitting it around my job. And we went to Lisbon at the end of January for 4 days, and I would move there tomorrow. I just spent a whole 40 million minutes telling everyone that I wouldn't be an expat. But if I had to move somewhere and feel like I could settle, I would move to Lisbon. It was just incredible. It got under my skin. I adored every second of being there, came home and immediately wanted to go back. And then 3 weeks later, I went to Paris. And that idea about, I hadn't got it out of my head, which is interesting. I hadn't got Lisbon out of my head and I wasn't ready. But conversely, Havana is one of those places that is crazy. And you think it's going to be one thing and you turn up and actually it is quite different, because you do have really highs, big highs and low lows. Yeah. And I think I've never really thought about it in that context, because I came away feeling so sad that I didn't really get on with Havana, because I'd wanted to go there for years.
But that's another thing, isn't it? Is feeling like you should love something. And I think Paris is one of those places that you feel like, well, everybody loves Paris. But actually, after you said you didn't like Paris, and I remember when you came back, and actually when you were there... Well, no,
basically, it wasn't even when I came back. I had been in Paris for half an hour, and I'd immediately sent a string of WhatsApps that was like, I fucking hate it here, please help me. And I got like pictures of maps from you. Like, honestly,
oh yeah,
you did your time as a friend that weekend. That's for sure. But
when
yeah,
when I said to Ollie about it, I was like, oh no, Sam's in Paris and she hates it. Ollie was like, yeah, well, of course she hates it. Shit, I hate Paris too. But I'm always making him go to Paris.
but it's so easy, right? Like living in London, Paris just is, it's obvious and it's easy if you want something different. But for my mind, like the food was phenomenal, like that's all cool. But the Eiffel Tower is ugly as shit, and there are so many other better Gothic cathedrals in Europe.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it is smelly.
Oh, I was walking through rivers of wee when I came out of my hotel. Like, it's an experience. Don't let that put you off, guys. Paris might be the place for you. So there we go. So I think you've already shared some amazing travel tips on the podcast about, you know, don't be afraid to go to an Arabic country. Make sure you're ready to leave a place before you move on. Don't get your hopes up because you might be disappointed. Would you say, is there like, you know, so like all of the gems, which is great. But is there like a top travel tip, whether that's kind of now, like when you're going away a bit more sporadically, or when you set off on your long-term travel plans, like a tip or kind of a thing that you really discovered that will help other people out?
It's okay, there's 2 tips. I would say take a lot less than you think you need. In fact, try to travel carry-on only.
Yes, 100. Oh my God. My life. So basically, the only reason I never travelled carry-on only for years was because I couldn't be asked to work out the liquid thing.
Yeah.
And that's such a stupid thing to say. I've lost all credibility of running a travel podcast, but it is the truth. Living my truth. And the minute I kind of got my act together and read the instructions, my entire life changed by travelling only carry-on.
Yeah, it's the best. I love it. I would never go back. I travelled carry-on for basically the whole time me and Ollie were away, kind of long-term travelling.
That's amazing.
Yeah, not for the first 6 months. For the first 6 months, we travelled with way more stuff than we needed, and I ditched so much. So yeah, that would be my probably number 1 tip. Like, you will feel scared and you'll feel like you don't have enough, but you just will. And then the other one I think would be don't overplan it. Don't overplan, because, okay, so if you're going for a week to Spain or to somewhere in Europe and you've booked your flights, obviously you're going to book accommodation. You're probably not going to turn up without accommodation, but don't book in 5 activities, that you're like, okay, so I'm going to do this on this day and I'm going to go to this restaurant, or, you know, whatever. Try and leave a little bit of room for breathing, because I'm all about slow travel. So and I know you're quite similar to me in that I think you don't necessarily want to hit up the museum or the bloody Louvre or whatever. Yeah. But I personally really, really believe that food and just like having a wander and getting lost in a city or country or whatever. Don't get lost in a country, that's a terrible tip. But getting lost, like having a wander, is as important as anything else in the Lonely Planet. I don't believe that just having a list of things that you want to tick off because you feel like you should and that you haven't experienced the city unless you go to this museum and that museum. Yeah, so don't overplan it. Leave yourself room to just wander, go to a cafe, live like a local. You'll have a better time.
Have brunch. Always have brunch.
Yeah, it's so important.
And I think as well, like, I mean, if you're going away in Europe, particularly, I think if you're going to other kind of far-flung destinations, this doesn't necessarily apply. But like the great thing about when I went to Amsterdam was that we woke up in the morning and then we got our phones out and we were like, let's have a look and see like what's good for brunch.
Yeah. And
we just on the morning kind of worked out maybe roughly where we might want to go, hit up like some travel blogs, and we're like, oh yeah, that looks nice. There's avocado on toast there, obviously. So we'll go there. And I think actually, like, I am an epic over planner in every aspect of my life. And I think going away with Beverly and Sophie, where we just really chilled and didn't do that much because they'd already been to Amsterdam before and done quite a lot of the main sites, really opened my eyes up in a way that I think like I had been a classic over planner actually, and it's the one reason why Andrew doesn't want to go away on city breaks with me anymore. Because I just drag him from pillar to post. I mean, we don't plan every element, and actually like my top tip is wherever I turn up, I try and find the free walking tour.
Yes.
Because I like to know what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Because I'm a bit of a geek like that. But then from there, you then find the places you want to spend more time in.
Absolutely. We always do a walking tour as well. It's such a good thing to do.
Yeah, and like every European country, I mean, there's Sandeman's, which they're in about 22 European countries, I think. But even in the countries, so like in Krakow and in Italy, we found free walking tours just by Googling.
Yeah, you gave me this tip and it's a brilliant one.
Yeah, I love it. Well done. Thanks. Okay. So I've got two last questions. One is a practical one and one is the wanky end question. So be prepared for that. So you like me, you're a Londoner, and actually the podcast won't be going out in the order that I've recorded them, but so far I've recorded 2 Yorkshire lasses. So their tips about their local areas have been very localised. But I would like to know from you as a local Londoner, if someone was coming to visit your neighbourhood, what would be the one thing that you'd recommend that they did?
Go to Mulberry Street Market.
Oh, yes.
I love Mulberry Street. I love Borough as well.
Mulberry Street Market. Yeah.
Mulberry Street is awesome because it's quieter and it's a bit more niche, and they've got really cool antique shops and awesome little bars and amazing food. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that's a great one. I haven't been to Mulberry Street Market for ages.
No,
I do love a market. I do love a market. We're awash with them in London. I mean, it also helps that my husband runs markets for a living.
Yes,
so
I
have to love markets. So it's a bit weird for me to say that. But like particularly food markets and food halls have become my thing. That's a great tip. So finally, before we wrap up, what do you think travel means to you?
Oh my God. I got a little bit of goose pimples when you said that. That's weird.
I channeled my best Kirsty Young Desert Island Disc vibes when I asked you that.
Imagine if I started crying.
Exclusive on the TRAVELUST podcast. Lucy gets emotional.
What does it mean to me? I don't know. I feel like this is going to sound really wanky. It's kind of life. I just don't feel like, I don't know what I would do if there wasn't travel in my life. It's sort of everything. When I'm not traveling in London, I'm thinking about travel. I'm planning my next trips, and Ollie knows I get horrendously antsy if I haven't been on a plane for a while, and I haven't been on a plane since January because pregnancy and baby. So yeah, it's just everything.
And that leads me on to, that wasn't my last question because we missed out. I forgot because the real star of the show has left the room.
Oh yeah, she has.
But I totally forgot. Anais just got a passport, and I know that you're planning a trip, and by the time this has gone out, you might have already gone on it. But I know that you're planning a trip because you've been asking me questions about my favourite place in the world, which is super exciting. But how do you think your life will change in terms of travel now you've got a wee one?
I think we're just gonna. I think we've got an excuse to travel in the way that we like to travel, which is slow and in comfort. Whereas before, sometimes we would maybe not spend as much money because we don't have to or whatever, or we pack in more than we want to because just because. And now we can just be like, no, we've got a baby, so actually we're going to take a long time over doing this, or we're not going to fly budget, we're going to fly the next class, the next class up, probably not the next class up, the next the next best airline or whatever. I think that's how it'll change. But I don't.
And Anais has already I was going to say, Anais has already got her travel chops in some ways because you took her to a bloody festival at 4 months old.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been to the Cotswolds. No big deal.
She's an absolute baller. Like, seriously, in a tent, loving life. That girl, when she hits 16 and goes to Reading Festival, I cannot wait.
Oh, my God, I can.
All right. Auntie Sparrow will look after her.
Yeah, exactly. You're going with her.
Yeah, of course. It's the only way I'll get in by the time she hits 16.
Oh my God, we're going to be so old, aren't we?
I know. It's so sad.
Let's not think about it.
Let's not think about it. Yeah. So this has been amazing. Because it's always fun when you get to interview friends, and I have learned new information about you, but this has been just a genuine, really interesting insight, particularly to that difference between expat life and traveling, and kind of really how travel has shaped kind of who you are. And when you said you get antsy when you've not been on a plane, I think it's so interesting because you were on a plane at a very young age, moving to Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's probably something about your inner ear and your brain about like balance and all of that stuff. There's got to be. It's like what happens when you're on a boat for a long time and you get off and you're all wobbly. I wonder if you actually have a physiological travel bug. Probably. Like you actually have a travel bug, Lucy.
Oh my God, I've literally got a travel bug.
Yeah, that's your excuse now. Like you can just use it.
Is this why I fall over all the time? Because of my early exposure to aviation?
No, that's the gin.
Yeah. I love it. You've cured me.
Yay! Now you know. So where can people, if people want to stalk you or indeed find out more about your adventures, I'm going to link some of Lucy's amazing travel advice in the show notes, particularly about Jordan and about slow travel, all the things we've talked about today. But where can people find you on the internet?
I am literally all over the internet. You can find me at Wanderluce.com. That's my blog, and that's where you'll find all of my travel posts. And then on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook at Wanderluce blog.
Go, everyone, go. And we'll put those links in the show notes in case you've forgotten them already. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast and being a guest and sharing and opening yourself up to learn all about your travel advice and your travel life.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of The Travelust, and I hope we've managed to inspire you to think about your next trip. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you gave it a little review and rating on iTunes or your podcast player of choice, so even more people can find their inner travel lust. Until next time, have a safe journey.